We are never trying to mislead someone or sell you a product that doesn't work. We stand behind the tests we've done.
I'm a formulations chemist and do not trust this study, because this here, with the percentage of zinc I know that this product has, it's not possible. Scientifically impossible.
A requirement for using social media in 2025 is having the ability to recognize when things are sus. And let me tell you, there are several sus things about this whole choice test.
Ultraviolet have officially withdrawn their lean screen from the market. The company has revealed that multiple tests of its lean screen product have returned SPF results ranging from 4 to 64.
All of the names and statements and accusations that were hurled at Choice, if they didn't do their test, when would we have found out? Hey guys, it's Briar and let's chat about it. Now on July 2nd, I posted a 1 hour and 9 minute video of me yapping about sunscreen, and specifically a third-party test that was done by a company in Australia named Choice, where they decided to test 20 sunscreens to see if they met their SPF claims. And the results were a big fat oh no Cleo, because 16 out of the 20 sunscreens did not meet their SPF claims. And I think the most diabolical / memorable result from that test was definitely the ultraviolet lean screen that got an SPF of 4. Yappa. And at the time, the reaction was really interesting, because a lot of people pointed the finger, mainly this one, some other ones too, at Choice, saying, boo, tomato, brother, this guy stinks. They don't know how to test sunscreens. Go back to your bloody vacuums. We don't want you here. We don't want your test. You're just fear-mongering. Like, the accusations were aplenty. And a lot of people claimed that it was scientifically impossible for a sunscreen with that much zinc oxide to get an SPF rating of 4. Well, 2 months later, I feel like a lot of people owe Choice a big I'm sorry. Is it too late now to say sorry? Maybe send some flowers, a well-rated sunscreen to them, because the information that has come out since that testing, and I think more importantly, everything that testing has brought to light, has confirmed that there were a lot of issues with sunscreens, with labs, with formulas, and has resulted in sunscreens being permanently pulled off the shelves. So if you guys want to yap about the sunscreen updates, ultraviolet's response, different responses, all the updates, sunscreens getting pulled from shelves, influencer responses, oh my gosh, so many questions, and do I have the answers? Well, yes, so stick around and let's get into it. Now, usually I'm not a watch my other video kind of girly. I get it. I yap a lot. Sometimes you want a break. We were on a break. But I will give past Briar something. She really got excited about researching, like, what is SPF, the different types of sunscreen. Like, I really just went on a silly little side quest, but I do think that made that video informative and helpful to give kind of the relevant information for going into a sunscreen drama, for understanding the context, what sunscreen testing looks like, all of those things like that. I do kind of recommend watching that video before this video, but hey, I can't reach through the screen right now and like force you to click it. It's just a suggestion. But I will be working off the assumption that you have done your research, your required reading for this video, because I don't want to be repeating myself. So, where did we leave off in that final video? We had a lot of influencers falling on the sword for ultraviolet, claiming it was physically, scientifically, biologically impossible for the sunscreen to get that low of a score. We had ultraviolet come back and show that they had done further testing and that their sunscreen had gotten a SPF of 61, I believe, which this is very important. An SPF sunscreen of 50, when they are tested, they can't get 50 to be called 50 because the variables, right. So you actually, for a SPF 50, it actually has to score 60 plus. Important and relevant. But ultraviolet had come back and said, we're retesting, but we will continue to retest. Choice had come back and proven that their studies were done by a credible lab. Everyone in the business agreed that it was a credible lab, agreed that the methodology that Choice used was valid, was fair, and should have obtained reliable results. And so that's kind of where we left off. Ultraviolet said they were going to continue to do research. Choice had shown their workings and had to really prove that they had done a valid and reliable test, and had put it forward to the TGA, which is the Therapeutic Goods Administration, right, to say, hey, maybe this is highlighting some, I don't know, gaps, some improves on. What do they call it when it's like feedback form, like places to improve, right? So that is where we left off, and it was definitely like open-ended. It definitely felt like there was a TBC across the whole story. For a while, I would say no major updates came about. And I can imagine from Ultraviolet's point of view, they were probably going to do as much testing as they could over the winter, because yes, it's winter in the Southern Hemisphere. When does spring start? Sometime this month? I can imagine to Ultraviolet, they're like, we need to do as much testing as we possibly can, so when we get to spring and summer, we can regain the trust of our Southern Hemisphere audience girlies, customers. And so that is seemingly what Ultraviolet did. They went away and did a lot of tests, and then on the 22nd of August, a Friday, a TGIF, if you will, how very Rebecca Black of us all, they posted a very crazy bananas update, which I shall read to you thusly. Urgent recall of Ultraviolet Lean Screen SPF 50+. All batch numbers and expiry dates. In consultation with the TGA, we are performing a recall for all batches of Ultraviolet Lean Screen SPF 50+ because of inconsistent SPF levels shown in independent testing. On a Friday? Okay, as a sunscreen brand, our responsibility has always been to prioritize your safety, protection, and skin health above all else. It remains the basis for every decision we make, which is why when you heard from us last, we made a commitment to you that we would continue to investigate a concerning discrepancy in the SPF testing results of our lean screen. Before we go any further, we want to make it clear that this only concerns the performance of lean screen. Additional testing on all Ultraviolet's products has reinforced our confidence in the rest of our line. I read it like that because it's in bold. We had multiple independent labs conduct new tests of lean screen. This week, we've received results from those tests that demonstrate significant and candidly atypical variability. Across 8 different tests, lean screen has now returned an SPF data of 4, the impossible 4, 10, 21, 26, 33, 60, 61, and 64. This wasn't good enough for us, and it isn't good enough for you. And it also isn't good enough for an SPF 50 rating. Right. Given this pattern of inconsistency in testing, we have decided to recall the Lean/Velvet screen from the market effective immediately. Purchasers of this product will be eligible for a refund and product voucher regardless of where it was purchased. Please click here to claim your refund. We are deeply sorry that one of our products has fallen short of the standards we pride ourselves on and that you have come to expect from us. And as we can see, this is absolutely not cutting the mustard. This is absolutely not what we would ever want to see, or you would ever see from an SPF 50 sunscreen. If a sunscreen is SPF 50, it has to get 60+. Here's what we're doing. Unlike the majority of our range, Lean Screen was created by a third-party manufacturer and was the only sunscreen they made for us. We will no longer be making any skin screens TM with that manufacturer. I guess that's the first big juicy new piece of information, that this product and this formula wasn't actually made by Ultraviolet, even though it was like touted as being like unique and special because it was a nice feeling mineral sunscreen. It's not actually their formula. It's from a third-party manufacturer, which like isn't crazy. It's not a crime, but this is news to a lot of people. I don't remember anyone saying this before. This is definitely news. The next thing they say, we're working with a new and wider network of testing facilities that have been BIP BIPEA audited and independently vetted, and we are no longer working with the original testing laboratory of Lean Screen. Second big juicy tomato dropped. They are calling out a specific laboratory that gave them back the initial test. I believe it was a 64 when they had the Lean Screen tested prior to putting on market. Every new ultraviolet will be SPF tested a minimum of 2 different independent labs prior to launch. That's clever. That's good. I appreciate that. We've increased the frequency of retesting to 18 months using off-the-shelf market samples, and will continue to take immediate action if we see any discrepancy. I think that this is really a good, important, huge idea. I think that this is probably what most people should do, because especially in a market like Australia, mate, buy goody gumdrops. It gets hot there in summer. Summer is scorching hot. The sunscreen stability, sitting in a car, in your bag, like literally Australian chocolate is gross because sorry Australia, but literally, Australian chocolate, they oftentimes have to formulate it differently to prevent it just melting and turning it into a puddle. As mentioned above, both refunds and product vouchers will be issued to Lean Screen customers. Trust is built and rebuilt over time, and we know we have work to do. Thank you to those who have so generously contributed their knowledge, expertise, and support throughout this process. And to our customers and community, thank you for your patience, care, and support. We've never taken it for granted, and we will continue to earn it. Ava and Beck, co-founders of Ultraviolet. I feel like the biggest takeaways from this was that this specific sunscreen was made by a third-party manufacturer, and like, what does that mean? Does anyone else use this? Does anyone else have this? Like, what is going on in the House of Commons over there? What are they talking about with this dodgy lab? And also, I think a lack of an apology towards choice, because Ava and Beck were very confident. I'm sure Editing Briar will be putting in what they said specifically.
Obviously, I've seen all of the press about the choice testing, and I guess I just wanted to give you a bit of an understanding of what's happened, how this could happen, why we're disputing these claims. What we do know about choice is they're not a regulator. They are not the ACCC. They are not the TGA. They are not the ones who approve sunscreens. We know that Choice decanted our product because they told us. They decanted it into a different packaging that it has not been tested in. Our hypothesis is there are a lot of uncontrollables in the way Choice tested our product.
They felt like the Choice results were not possible and was some sort of problem. They went over the fact that their second test in Germany shouldn't have been allowed to be used at all because it was like a 5-person panel test instead of a 10-person panel test, which, like, valid and fair, but I think they tried to use that to be like, see, it's proof they don't know how to test. These test results are wrong. Like, they were very, very assertive in their belief that Choice was wrong. But as you can imagine, this stirred up quite the reaction, and specifically on social media. And I feel like this happened for obviously multiple reasons. Firstly, just being that Ultraviolet is a very social media present brand. They are very online, and this product did go viral and became very popular online as well. So it was very much a product with the social media following and a brand that is very much in tune with the social media following. And in saying that, a lot of influencers were really like Twilight, Rosalie, going out to bat for Ultraviolet and really condemning Choice for publishing their study and even really just doing it in the first place. Let's start with how people reacted to this initial news.
Back in June, the publication Choice claimed that Ultraviolet's Lean Screen that claimed to have an SPF rating of 50 actually had an SPF rating of 4. The brand responded by having a bunch of independent testing done, and now the product is being pulled from the shelf. Quite frankly, this is extremely worrying. This is an Australian sun care brand. We have some of the highest rates of melanoma and skin cancer in the world, and because of that, we have really intense regulatory bodies surrounding sunscreen. So the fact that it took a magazine that rates vacuums to prompt this is pretty scary. In terms of a response, I think the brand did the best job they could have, where they outlined all of the things that they'll be doing to make sure that nothing like this ever happens again. I also appreciated that they outlined that they know this is bad and that they know this is going to really hurt their brand, one that they've built around sun safety and trust.
This was a bit of a fail, and it shows that it actually was the formulation and not what Choice did, or not the manufacturing sort of chain of command and something that went whatever happens to be, it was actually the formula. So they have announced that they're going to do more strict testing when it comes to bringing products to the market. They also blamed another third-party manufacturer, saying this was the only sunscreen they made for ultraviolet, and so they're not going to use that manufacturer anymore. I still feel like that's sort of blaming people. What I want to see to rebuild trust with ultraviolet is them do this test to all of their sunscreens that they currently have on their website or up for sale. And so we can see 8 very high marks. I feel like that is what's going to build loyalty back and trust back. This inconsistency, we don't know if it's due to that manufacturer that formulated it wrong or whatever it was. We don't know that. So they only did it with this one because this is the one that was tested with Choice. So I would love to see them do this with all of their sunscreens.
Her reaction highlights a topic that gets brought up a lot, which is trust. How can people trust ultraviolet? Yes, they've said it was that manufacturer because of their formula and because of the testing lab. We didn't catch it, but I think those statements are less likely to be believed after they were so vehement about the fact that they believed in that formula and then they turned out to be wrong. So I totally understand why she thinks that an infographic like that for every product would be good. And I feel like they don't have to do 8. I feel like, you could just do like 2 to 4 and post on your socials or have it be a part of that product on each page when you can go to buy it on their website. I feel like there could be fun, cool ways that you can incorporate it and continue that transparency and them showing this information. But anyway, let's watch another reaction.
Avoid this viral sunscreen brand. This is Ultraviolet, one of the best-selling sunscreen brands on skincare planet Earth. But the way that they responded to the scandal surrounding their lean screen sunscreen speaks volumes for the ethics and the ethos of this brand. And I don't think we can trust them when it comes to our sun protection. Now, the way that Ultraviolet responded to this speaks volumes. Instead of doing a root cause analysis looking to what was going on, their first step was to just try and discredit Choice, an independent consumer protection organization, saying that their testing was flawed and problematic and there wasn't any problem with this product whatsoever. Now, what did Choice, an independent organization, have to gain from discrediting one particular brand? Absolutely nothing. This was total nonsense, and a lot of their other testing actually showed products lived up to their SPF. They then doubled down, and Ultraviolet reached out to a lot of their content creators and their biggest supporters, asking them to do posts saying they have no issue with the Ultraviolet lean screen sunscreen, and again trying to discredit the Choice independent organization and the way they conducted their testing. This is terrible. This is like a 101 of how you don't respond to issues. Well, of course, more testing was done and showed Choice were validated all along. This product does not deliver consistent SPF 50+, and of course, Ultraviolet had to remove it from sale. They've issued some sort of a non-apology, kind of going in, it was everyone else's fault but theirs. Ultraviolet really need to do better. If they want to regain people's confidence, they need to do more than this non-apology where they said it is only this product that's impacted, all their other sunscreens are fine. Why would we believe them? Why would we put any of those products on our skin? We wouldn't. I would avoid the entire range. They're also in a lot of beauty boxes on TikTok right now. So again, I would avoid them. Why would you be buying something that you just don't know whether you can trust and what you're putting on your skin? And I would say to the content creators that created content backing up Ultraviolet, I think we all need to take pause and think, can we learn from that? Because that was clearly not the right approach.
And I think the fact that a lot of influencers backed up Ultraviolet and ultimately turned out to be wrong is definitely something I want to put a pin in, because I think it is definitely a cautionary tale and something for like us as watchers and viewers of influencers to like keep in mind as a limitation of them and their relationships and how that could cloud their reactions to situations like this. But I do think that his reaction is something that a lot of people feel. They don't feel like they can trust them. They feel the way that they acted was shady. And I think the lack of apology towards Choice is definitely something that gets brought up a lot, and definitely something that people feel like would not have been so hard to do. Like, yes, Choice is not like a person that you can apologize to, but considering they were so confident and were very dismissive of Choice initially, when ultimately Choice did exactly what they are supposed to do, did exactly what their intentions are for consumers in the market, which is check products, check that the regulations are catching what they should, and if they're not, raise it to the public and the relevant regulators to ask them to improve and to do better. And I think a lot of people felt like that was a really important missing piece from their response, was the lack of apology, and some people felt like they were blaming everybody else. I do feel like they have been pretty transparent, especially compared to other brands, but let's continue with some other responses.
So Ultraviolet chose a Friday to drop the news that they are removing Lean Screen from sale and from production. And if you know the media, you know Friday is when journalists are kicking off for the week. But this Friday in particular, they are busy with the childcare safety meeting at a federal level, and they are busy with Bruce Lerman. So before we go any further, that is not a coincidence that they've... All right, so at the time of the whole Choice Australia investigation, I said that Ultraviolet's response from a PR perspective was risky. And they were the outlier. They were the ones that came out. I think they called Choice Australia's findings not remotely accurate, called into question the methodology of testing. They released a lot of different comms across a bunch of different channels. They even gave quotes to media. It was pretty comprehensive, and they were very combative and pretty aggressive from a communications point of view. When the results are not what you want and not what you said, that becomes tricky from a communications perspective. But I still think they're doing well. I really do. And I think a lot of people are not going to agree with me, but the first thing they have done well is they have continued to keep their customers and the public in the loop. So we have had updates across all their public channels about the number of investigations and independent testing that they are doing on this product. So big tick. You need to keep people frequently updated and tell them when they can expect to hear more from you.
And I definitely do agree with that point. When you go onto their website, it's the first thing that you see. When you go on their Instagram, it's the most recent post. And equally, they have a saved highlight as well for the refund link. So I definitely think they're not trying to hide this update. Yes, maybe they wanted to soften the blow by posting it on a Friday, but I do think for the most part, they're definitely trying to get the message out there. Maybe they were just trying to get their message out there before journalists could kind of critique it. I don't know. Maybe that was the kind of thought behind it. They wanted to kind of have it be more between them and the people that like them to kind of soften the impression. I don't know, but let's continue.
It seems like they have done quite rigorous amount of independent investigation and testing. Now, I don't know the ins and outs of whether TGA has forced them to do that or not, but the amount of detail, information about kind of the science, the process that they have put in their statement today adds credibility and another big tick. Don't be opaque. The other major point of their statement, and I think their strategy at the moment, is basically highlighting that the formula for this product is actually not proprietary to them. And interesting, the Australian Financial Review did a story on this a couple of weeks ago, basically saying that a bunch of other companies will be using the same formula that Ultraviolet do. So in the Ultraviolet statement, they are able to say, lab created this, we didn't do it in-house, it's their fault, essentially. Now, it's not, I don't think they are blame shifting, because they have used language around some accountability, but it is convenient when you are doing this kind of communication to the public that there is another party that can take some accountability for that as well.
I definitely do see both sides of the coin to it being a third party's formula, right? Because I can see in one sense you're like, okay, I've isolated the problem, this is why it won't affect our other products, and trying to reassure people and show how they've come to that conclusion. But I can also understand the perspective of people feeling like, well, no, they're just blaming someone else's formula even though they still chose to use it. But anyway, let's watch another reaction.
I love how transparent and accountable Ultraviolet are being right now. I mean, from the statement to all the influencers already coming out within 2 minutes before the press could kind of get hold of anything, being like, they DM'd me, they're pulling it from the shelves, like how amazing, because the difference and the ranges just wasn't good enough. But legally they had to. Guys, let's be real. They can't continue to sell it legally. There's no apology to Choice about this. There's no, hello, this is a brilliant PR crisis management. No, they legally have to pull this sunscreen. It's as simple as that. And also, having said that, I don't believe necessarily these top numbers. And I'm going to tell you why, because these numbers originally came from a lab called PCR. And after doing a little bit of digging, which isn't hard, the director of this lab, and allegedly, I don't want to get sued, is a little bit dodgy.
And I do think that is an important point and an interesting way to look at how PR can spin things, where obviously if Ultraviolet is passionate about sunscreen, they don't want to put out a sunscreen that doesn't meet the regulations and the standard for the SPF, but also equally, of course, they literally can't keep it on the shelves if they can't prove that it meets that SPF requirement. And so even though this information came out on a Friday, there was definitely still a huge reaction and a lot of information came to light. But I think some of the more interesting things is obviously, like that last video said, a dodgy lab. And this is something that was brought up after the choice testing. And this is the Princeton Consumer Research Lab tested 8 sunscreens that failed the SPF claims. And this is on ABC News. And so basically what happened is once that information came out, people were trying to figure out, okay, how did these sunscreens get that testing in the first place? And a lot of roads led to the PCR lab, which tested 8 of the sunscreens. And one thing that is both concerning and interesting that this article highlighted is that there was very little variation in the SPF number recorded for each subject test. To us, the regular schmegular people, girly pops, bestie pops, whoever, like, we don't know what normal variation for a sunscreen test is, right? But I imagine it's like basic math stuff where they have the 10 panel test, right? They add them all together, divide them by 10. There's your average. Dr. Rowe said that in my entire career, we have not had such homogeneous results in a vivo brackets human SPF test. And I think that's obviously because humans were so variable. We've got, our eyes, it's so subjective, blah, blah, blah. And so I think that what a lot of people have been side-eyeing this lab about is that they have gone on to give unreliable or allegedly, I don't know, I'm just a girl, fabricated results, and then has put to market sunscreens that do not meet the SPF standards that they claim. And so that definitely also seems to link back to Ultraviolet's statement where they say they will not be using this lab anymore. And you would hope so. Who knows how rare, random, coincidental this is that we have bad formula plus bad lab equal just an SPF 4 out in the world claiming to be SPF 50, but it is a really bad combination of two things. And ultimately this obviously led to the TGA wanting to improve on regulations and to make a statement on the Choice SPF sunscreen report. So actually a day before Ultraviolet released their statement, the TGA released a follow-up statement and said that the investigation is ongoing and currently focused on a comprehensive review and analysis in the high volume of data received from sponsors. Given the complexity and scale of the material involved, this process will take time. And then they basically continue to go in and talk about the limitations of using in vivo, which is like the human testing, which, as we said before, is literally putting your arm under a UV light with a patch of nothing and a patch of sunscreen. Is this the best that sunscreen can get? I'm sorry, I was baffled, chats, when I found out that that was how sunscreen was tested, but that is like the top of the tops. They're basically going on to say that because obviously the risks and all of that context in Australia, they do take it very seriously, and they also encourage using multiple methods of sun protection. And so that was really the first big wave and the first big amount of new information. And upon reflection of so many people calling out Choice, saying that they don't know how to test sunscreen, they didn't know what they were doing, go back to your blenders and vacuums, get out of this space, stop fear mongering, like the list was endless. This is scientifically impossible. All of the names and statements and accusations that were hurled at Choice, they have now highlighted so many important issues that, like, if they didn't do their test, when would we have found out? When would we have found out about this dodgy, third-party formula? Who would have put the dots together about this allegedly dodgy lab? And would Ultraviolet have actually ever realized that this very popular sunscreen that they were selling did not meet the standards at all, and sometimes didn't even meet like an SPF 20, didn't even meet like an SPF 10. Like, it's not just that it was below SPF 50, it was sometimes barely even a sunscreen. But I'm sure you can see my little silly timestampy doodaddy down below. I am not even close to finish yapping. And that is because, what if I told you we were just at the beginning? What if I told you that we are still at where the earth, the sun, the stars all aligned? Because this really was the first domino to cascade in a line, because that same weekend, another sunscreen was pulled from the shelves. And this one has definitely been handled differently, which is why I feel like it is important to highlight how overt Ultraviolet has been with their information. They really don't want you to miss it. They want you to see it on their Instagram. They want you to see it on their website. They really want you to see you can get a refund. They're recalling the product. Because this other brand was trying to, channel their Dua Lipa Houdini, hoping that everyone was watching this Ultraviolet situation unfold, whilst they also were pulling their product from the shelves. And what product is that, I hear you asking? Oh, just the Naked Sundays Collagen Glow mineral sunscreen, because that same weekend the Ultraviolet pulled their product, so did they. And because of all the lore that was dropped by Ultraviolet, everyone was like, do they have the same formula? Did they use the same lads? What is going on? Is Naked Sundays trying to pull the wool over our eyes? Is Naked Sundays trying to secretly pull their sunscreen? And all this time, did Ultraviolet and Naked Sunscreen kind of have a dupe of each other? And one thing that I think is really interesting regarding the Naked Sunday situation is that it definitely didn't get as much attention initially because of Ultraviolet and because of all the information they put out so publicly. But I think for a few reasons, as we'll see why, they definitely got brought into the mix.
It's Monday and we have another Sunscreen Gate update. Well, two actually, again. First of all, Naked Sundays were a little bit hounded on social media over the weekend and clearly via customer service channels as well. The reason for that is when Ultraviolet announced their recall of Lean Screen on Friday. They suggested there were problems with the manufacturer and also that it was a base formula from that manufacturer. And people suspected that Naked Sundays were using the same manufacturer and base formula. Naked Sundays haven't confirmed that they use that manufacturer, but they use more than one. I do think it was a little bit unfair that, the finger was pointed at a manufacturer by another brand on Friday. And that didn't really leave any other brands with enough time to consult with legal, with professional comms, which I feel like you would want to do because this is an important situation.
The ABC have just announced that another Australian sunscreen brand, Naked Sundays, are now pulling their SPF 50 from the shelves of Mecca. On Friday, Australian sunscreen brand Ultraviolet announced that they'll be pulling their Velvet Screen from the market. This was the only product from the brand manufactured by Wild Child, a Perth-based TGA and FDA licensed manufacturer. Wild Child have confidentiality agreements with brands, so they couldn't confirm whether or not they manufacture Naked Sundays as well. But given that Naked Sundays have paused the only related product to one Australian manufacturer, it's really likely that it is them. This issue with sunscreen regulations by the TGA is really significant. After the severity of this issue, it's a really interesting insight into how the beauty industry actually works.
Yes, I feel like you could definitely theorize a lot of different perspectives, play devil's avocado as to why Naked Sundays kind of went in the order that they did, where they pulled the product first and made the statement second. I do kind of wonder if it's maybe because, unlike Ultraviolet, who have been aware of this since even before Choice published their findings, because they gave Ultraviolet a heads up, like, hey besties, heads up, your sunscreen sucks. They didn't say that, obviously. But I wonder if Naked Sundays eventually found out, same formula, raggy, we better test this. And so they are quite a few months behind Ultraviolet in the information that they have. From that update, which I think was originally on the Monday, the 25th, and has been updated on the 27th. And another thing I should note is it's not on their socials that I could see, and you have to scroll on the website to find it. My poor index finger had to go all the way to the bottom of the web page. But the main points from their updates is that their product has not been recalled and adheres to all current TGA guidelines. Without being asked by the TGA, they have been proactive in getting extra independent SPF testing to back up the current testing. And while they wait result, they have paused sales on the products. No other Naked Sunday product has been impacted. And so they say for the past few months, they have taken proactive action behind the scenes by doing our own own due diligence and additional SPF testing across multiple labs, meeting with government bodies, vetting ingredients and collecting data, things like that. And so I do wonder the kind of background waves that the choice results found. And I think especially for the people that realize, oh, we have the same laboratory, the same third-party formula as Ultraviolet, we better get cracking. But so I guess for multiple reasons, they can't be as definitive and infographic-y as Ultraviolet was, even though they have been kind of working on this in the background with all the confidentialities and legal blah blah blahs. They really haven't given as much information as Ultraviolet has, and so I do think it is interesting watching them both react and how the information is being given, how upfront they are with it, and that is kind of what is being compared at the moment as well, and seeing how these very similar kind of companies, I would say, like they're both skincare brands that are very like social media focused, are reacting to being in the situation. And so at this point of the story, it's really one of those, if we had a nickel for every time a mineral-based sunscreen was pulled off the shelves, we'd have 2 nickels, which like isn't a lot, but it is weird that it happened twice. Well, what if I told you we didn't have 2 nickels? We now have 7 nickels, nearly a dime. Is that the right one? I don't know. It's been a long time since I used the United States doll here. But it is in fact possible that there could potentially be 10 different sunscreens that are using this third-party laboratories, formula for their mineral sunscreens. And so, ergo 2 + 2 is 4, 5 + 5 10. They probably aren't meeting the SPF claims. And so where we are at now is that we have had 7 sunscreens pulled off the market and 5 of them have been confirmed to use this formula. So I want to play you guys a video of someone who's much smarter and more eloquent than me explaining it.
These 5 different sunscreen products have been pulled from shelves over sun safety concerns, and they all have at least one thing in common. They all have the same base formula. The same formula as Ultraviolet's Lean Screen SPF 50+, which has been completely recalled after choice testing found it had an SPF rating of 4. The 5 which have been paused have each issued their own statement, essentially saying they're waiting on further testing on their sun protection claims. So while people can't currently buy these products, customers aren't automatically entitled to a refund because it isn't a full product recall. The ABC asked sunscreen experts to take a look at these paused products, and they found that all of them share the same base formula as Ultraviolet's Lean Screen. As the experts scientifically put it, it's kind of like you're at an ice cream store and these sunscreens are the same flavor with different toppings, which is things like fragrance and color. The ABC can confirm there are at least 4 other sunscreen products that share the same base formula still on shelves. The TGA, which regulates this space, has now confirmed it's examining sunscreens with the same or similar formulation base as part of a wider investigation. If you're wondering which sunscreens do have the SPF rating as advertised, we know that according to the choice report, these are the 4 that passed the test. The TGA has also reiterated to Aussies that wearing sunscreen is still important, especially given Aussies' high rates of skin cancer.
And I just really love that ice cream analogy. I feel like it just really perfectly fits my intelligence. But again, thanks to Choice's testing, which so many people were condemning a few months earlier, it has now revealed that this lab, which was confirmed to be Wild Child, how Emma Roberts of them, is the laboratory that formulated this formula and has sold it off to multiple different brands who are using it as kind of the base. And they add their own sprinkles, they add their own toppings. We get it. And so I was really trying to look to see if this lab had made a statement. And this is embarrassing, but I'm going to tell you guys anyway. It was so weird. I was Googling, of course, to see if they had made a statement, and Google AI, Gemini, I think that's what it's called, was like, oh yeah, they made this statement here, click it. It was a booby link. I am traumatized. It was so scary and unhelpful, and I feel like this would be a great, point for a VPN sponsorship, but alas, I'm but a girl with no sponsorships. But thanks a lot, Gemini, thanks a lot, you idiot. That was unhelpful, and I even checked their LinkedIn, which is a very scary place, and I couldn't find any statements, basically. All of that to say, I couldn't find any statements from Wild Child, but it seems like ABC have been really boots on the ground with this one. They got a product testing expert named Michael Trode. don't know how to say that, Troud, and he was able to confirm the similarities. They were able to, in their own way, using their own expertise, to confirm that yes, all these products do have this same or very similar base formula. Basically, the only statements I could find from Wild Child was that confidentiality, blah, blah, blah. So nothing about like what is wrong with their formula, like how did this happen, what's the problem, is it just because, as we said in my last video, mineral sunscreens are tricky to formulate and so they got this one wrong. But it has led to a much bigger and widespread issue than I think anyone could have imagined, because it went from Choice finding out that ultraviolet clean screen had an SPF of 4 and everyone being like, don't think so, boo, wrong, couldn't be, to when people actually looked into the situation, finding a lab that was allegedly not doing valid SPF tests, and to a laboratory that had created a third-party base formula that they sold to a bunch of different brands and a bunch of different brands were using, and that was also an unreliable formula. And I think it's just the most ironic twist of all that people were condemning Choice so much and they are now turning to Choice to be like, okay, which sunscreen should we use? What ones did they say were good? Which is definitely a big switch up to a lot of people's initial reactions. But I can't help but wonder, from like the Wild Child and the laboratory side of it all, is that obviously this was a formula that a lot of people really enjoyed. Like it felt good. It felt like a nice product to use. A lot of brands like to use it, and you kind of can't help but Carrie Bradshaw wonder if maybe the brands looked past kind of the too good to be true, or the combination of that plus the bad lab completely hid the fact that this was not a reliable formula and did not meet the SPF 50 rating that it was touting. And I don't know if anyone else was like a makeup girly back in the day, but this really reminds me of like when we found out that Morphe and a bunch of different brands were just like white labeling stuff. And I don't think it's uncommon or like means that they are bad products, but I definitely think this is information that we would not have known otherwise if this whole dramification hadn't happened. And so this really leads me into my final point of it all, which we put a pin in so we can take that out, the influencer side of it. The influencers that all went to bat, fell on the sword, whatever analogy you want to use, for Ultraviolet and other brands, and really condemned Choice, really said, who is this guy anyway? Like, what does he know? And made huge claims like it's scientifically impossible to get an SPF of 4 when your product has 22.75% zinc oxide in it. And well, it was proven to be true. And so to me, that was kind of like the final big piece of this whole situation, because a lot of influencers had so much to say about it. Quite frankly and honestly, a lot of them have not updated their response, have just left their original responses and not gone back on them, have not admitted that they're wrong. And I wanted to show you guys actually one example of that quickly.
By now you've probably seen this Choice test that is claiming that lots of people's favorite SPF products aren't actually meeting the 50 plus claim. I'm here to debunk this. I'm a formulations chemist, and grain of salt, do not trust this study, because this here, with the percentage of zinc I know that this product has, it's not possible, scientifically impossible for it to come back as a 4.
This creator has not made an updated statement, even though it has been a few weeks since Ultraviolet has pulled their product and confirmed that it does not meet its SPF claims. And I think it's just so interesting to see people that were so confident in the belief that it was impossible to get an SPF 4, that Choice had to be wrong. And they really came to share this perspective loudly on social media when Choice was doing what it was supposed to do. Choice was testing products to see if they met the claims for the consumer. And there is one other influencer that I wanted to show you guys specifically, because to her credit, she has posted an update. So I did want to show you guys a little bit of her initial video, which we did watch in my part 1.
Consumer group Choice tested 20 of the biggest names on the market and found 16 of those failed to meet their claimed SPF 50 rating.
I'm getting so many DMs and tags saying Ultraviolet are scamming us, and to that I say this. A requirement for using social media in 2025 is having the ability to recognise when things are sus. And let me tell you, there are several sus things about this whole choice test. Number one, Ultraviolet's lean screen comes back as SPF 4 when it's meant to be 50. That is obviously diabolically low, but if it had been like 30 or 40, I might have believed it. 4, I do not believe. And I'm glad I had that initial reaction, because I then find out that scientists who aren't part of choice are saying that's scientifically impossible.
And I think this is a really common thing that we see online at the moment, is that people want to be independent thinkers. People want to question everything that they see, but also in this situation, these creators have a relationship with Ultraviolet. This creator has worked with Ultraviolet, and many other influencers and creators had too. And comparing that to Choice, who has no relationship with these people, doesn't have that inbuilt trust, doesn't have that inbuilt relationship, the assumption was to not trust Choice and to trust this brand that is and was very passionate about SPF and sun safety, and who they have a relationship with. And whilst yes, I totally agree that skepticism is healthy and important, but ultimately this influencer and other influencers were wrong, and I don't think being wrong is a problem. I think being wrong is human. I think being wrong is inevitable. We are all always going to be wrong at one point or another, and that is not a bad thing. But I think it is how we learn from being wrong. And do we have takeaways? Can we see, how do I not be wrong like that in the future? Because I'm going to be wrong in a different way. I'm going to make a mistake. Of course, obviously. And so that is why I also wanted to react to her new response and her response to all the updates, to see if there is that reflection, to see how this information has been processed.
Okay, let's debrief on the latest on Ultraviolet. I've got an elastic band in my hair. Ultraviolet pulling lean screen and the whole Choice versus Ultraviolet debate. I know people are interested in finding out what I think, and that is totally fine. I imagine people are probably thinking, well, in the last video you said you thought Choice was wrong, and I will hold my hands up and say, yeah, I did think that. With the information that we had, that is what I honestly thought at the time was going to happen. What's going on here? I trust the people that follow me. I think most of them know that I try and make videos with my followers' best interests at heart. So even if that goes against the grain, that is what I honestly felt at the time. So I don't feel any type of embarrassment now that lean screen has been pulled off the shelves, because I made a prediction and my prediction was wrong.
And I definitely agree that you shouldn't be embarrassed when you make a mistake. You shouldn't be embarrassed to be wrong. But I do think it is a good reminder to reflect on how confidently we state things, because her and many other people were claiming that these results were scientifically impossible, and how definitively we say our opinions. But anyway, let's continue watching her response.
I understand why people feel like maybe I was unnecessarily unfair towards Choice, but there were two main reasons that I made that video, and 2 points that I specifically had to make, that I felt I had to say to make the video fair. The first one was, I think people were thinking I was being unnecessarily mean because I was calling Choice a witch, thinking I was talking about witch hunts. I wasn't talking about witch hunts, and I'm smiling because it is kind of comical. I wasn't talking about witch hunts. There is in fact a magazine in the UK that does exactly what Choice does, called Witch. It's called Witch Magazine. Even though they're independent and so it seems like they wouldn't have any bias, they still do have to think about their marketing. They have to think about what's going to make good headlines and what's going to make people sign up, because that's how they make money. And to clarify, I definitely wasn't suggesting that they were lying about the results, only that when they got the testing result of 4, they would have known that would make headlines, and rightly so. Coupled with the fact that Witch in the UK a couple of years ago ran the same test on Bondi Sands, made a huge headline, the exact same thing went down, and then it just blew over. I was simply drawing attention to that fact because I thought it was important for my audience to know that, so they had all the facts, so they can make their own decision, and I felt it was likely that a similar thing might be happening.
And that is just really an interesting reflection on how these third-party companies are perceived by the public, and how, to an extent, they do still have to engage in clickbaity titles and eye-catching titles. Like, even I, Briar Chats, like, I have to think in my silly little head, how do I concisely tell the people what I am yapping about for too long in an eye-catching and fun way? And so those can be kind of conflicting wants and desires, especially when you're wanting to just portray important information and portray the facts that you have found, but also get people to read about them in the first place. I knew she was talking about Witch, as in Witch Magazine. I'm pretty sure I clarified that in my video, but I can understand people getting that confused, but I don't think that that was like the be all and end all of her argument, to be honest. And I'm not sure which Bondi Sands product she is talking about, but a couple of years ago, the TGA did also pull a Bondi Sands product, so I'm not sure if it's the same one, and it did get recalled for not meeting its SPF claims due to the formula splitting.
Now looking at the current results and what's just happened today or yesterday, I have one main gripe, and that's how the information is being interpreted across the internet. And that is the only thing that would potentially stop me from speaking about it, because it really personally gets under my skin the way I see information interpreted online. Specifically, what bothers me is how people are saying, well, Choice were right. The SPF is 4. And actually, the SPF isn't necessarily 4. There have been 7 tests. Had to count that out. 7 tests. 3 said the rating came back above 50 and it claims to be SPF 50. And 4, including Choice, said it came back below 50. So 7 different labs gave 7 different readings. They were SPF 4, SPF 10, 21, 26, 33, 60, 61 and 64. The problem with this is that they are way too varied for us to know what the SPF actually is. It's not that we have concluded it's SPF 4. That's the problem that I have with the information and the commentary that's going around. And I'm neither on Ultraviolet's side nor Choice's side. I feel the water is very murky still. I know people are searching for black and white answers, but at this point in time, I feel like that's not really the case, other than the one fact, which is clearly don't use lean screen anymore. We don't know that lean screen is SPF 4, but we do have other facts. First one is that SPF testing fluctuates a lot. It's something that came as a big surprise to most of the public. They thought that their SPF 50 was bang on SPF 50. They didn't realize it might be 45, it might be 52, it might be 56.
I do find her response interesting, to be so hesitant to just say that Choice was right or like wasn't wrong in their results, because either A, Ultraviolet included the SPF 4 in their testing, or B, they got another test that also resulted in a 4. But as we saw other people question, were those 60s from that dodgy lab or allegedly unreliable lab? And so are the only 60s that it got unreliable 6? Felt a bit like majoring in the minors, but I do kind of understand what she means, because what I talked about in my other video as well is that SPF 50 blocks approximately 98% of UVB rays, where SPF 30 blocks 97%. So it's 1% difference between SPF 30 versus 50. Whereas I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions as to how SPF actually works, but I do understand what she means in that respect, that the sunscreen has repeatedly tested above a 4, but majoritively, not even close to a 60 or an SPF 50 plus.
Secondly, Choice rated it SPF 4, but 6 other labs rated it at completely different numbers, so we still don't really know what it is. Thirdly, we now know that white labeling is quite a common way to make a cosmetic line. That's when you go to a lab, you say, I want to make a brand, they give you the formula and you put your label on it. It's not what I would do, but it is what a lot of people do, and in theory, those formulas should be good because they're made by cosmetic formulators. So that SPF should have been the SPF that it said. And if that's important to you, that you're not using a white labeled product, then you should probably look into all of the other products you're using, because a lot of them may be done that way. The only thing I will say that I think is a little bit strange on Ultraviolet's part at this point is that they're saying they've done multiple other tests on all of their other sunscreens in the main sunscreen line and they've come out fine. And a lot of people are saying, well, post them then. And I agree, right? Just post them. They're only responding to the people in the comments saying, which one do you want to know? I don't really get why they wouldn't just post them all, because I think that would make people feel a lot more confident in them. I know there'll be people who are like, well, you did a brand deal for Ultraviolet, so of course you're going to be on their side. I know the people who follow me will know that I don't care. I'm often at events and in meetings in awkward situations where I've made a video saying I didn't like something and the person who made that product is literally staring me face to face and it's really fucking awkward. I don't care about that. It's awkward, but I don't care about that. So I'm going to say what I want to say. So I made that video because it was my honest thoughts at the time. Clearly we shouldn't be using lean screen. So if I can give you any takeaway, it's scrutinize the information you have available. Try not to be too influenced by other comments that you see. Try and make your own decision.
And so I have to give credit where credit is due, because she is one of the very few people that kind of came back and said, yeah, I was wrong and these are my thoughts and this is why I came to that conclusion. But even though that she says she is willing to stand up to brands and disagree with brands, I think when we look at the overall reaction and how influencers as a whole reacted, and I'm not trying to lump her in with them because I do want to commend that she stood up and was accountable and reflected on how she made that video and now her feelings now. When we look at these influencers' reactions, all of them have a relationship with Ultraviolet or had a relationship with Ultraviolet. As people were saying, we're getting messaged by Ultraviolet. So it's just in the human nature. It's in our nature to trust the side that we have a relationship. It is harder to question them. It is harder to be critical of them when that is the side we have the relationship with, and the other side that's saying the mean thing about them, we don't have a relationship with them. And I do think that that is a bigger reflection on, like she said, Which in UK and Choice in Australia. But I do think it highlights how much having that relationship and that trust impacts how people react to the information. And I'm not really sure how Choice can make it better. Like, who am I to tell them? I would kind of say that there is a lot to be improved on in their socials and how they communicate, because a lot of the information that they do communicate does come across quite dry, and there isn't that relationship building. I feel like there could be so much behind the scenes content. They could bring in experts, they could get really colloquial and share, do a vlog even. Like, there are so many ways that they could bring people along the journey of the testing that they do and form a better relationship with the audience, so that when they come out with important information like we've seen here, where it literally has caused so many dominoes, where so many changes are being made, where so many things are being questioned, where so many products have been pulled, that people see them as a reputable and reliable source of information. Not to say that they're always going to be right, because as we said before, never going to happen, never going to be me, never going to be anybody, but that in the future, when they do have important information, that there isn't this crazy back and forth and people kind of pointing the finger at them and being like, don't trust this guy, who even are they? And like I said earlier, I do think it is just a cautionary tale to remind us of the limitations of influencers, as well as the relationships that they do have. Like we see with all the influencers that, you know, want to go on a tripping with Tarte trip, and so will use Tarte products with that kind of motivation in the back of their mind. There always will be limitations, and there often are those relationships that do make it harder for them to be unbiased. And when it's a good situation and the influencer loves the product, it's a great combination, it's a great dynamic, it's great for their audience as well as the brand. But obviously, if something like this happens and something goes wrong, how are they going to react, and who are they going to believe, and are they going to do the right thing for their audience? And equally, I think it's just like a good reminder as to like what is being recommended. Like, it's all fun and games when it's a lip balm or a mascara or an eyeshadow palette or some shoes, but sunscreen is a medical product. Sunscreen has a very important outcome on your health, just like other health supplements and other products that we've talked about. And so unless you have the kind of professional understanding, what is that influencer's limitations to that? I mean, we did see another influencer who said they had the credibility and were also wrong. Of course, take a grain of salt with what people say. And I don't say this to bring down influencers or to say that they don't provide value, because I think that a lot of them are trying their best and are trying to recommend good products to their audience. But again, there always will be limitations. Again, we always are going to be humans, and having relationships with these brands is going to make it harder to be unbiased. But yes, those are all of the updates that we have so far. I think in the bigger picture, it is just crazy how much questioning that it has brought to Australian sunscreen and testing, and hopefully it just means that it provides improvement and makes things better and makes sunscreen safer and more efficient. But it is just kind of crazy to me that it came from Tess, that when initially people heard about it, they just didn't believe it. But I would love to know what you guys think about this whole situation in the comments down below, so please let me know. But yes, thank you guys so much for watching. If you stay till the end, you are a real one. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. And if you want to keep up with me between my uploads, I'm on TikTok and Instagram, and I'll link my vlog channel down below. And YouTube should be recommending another one of my videos on the screen right now. But don't you worry guys, because I'm not funny there either. Bye.